We're live. We're on Treasure Island Beach just outside of St. Pete, Florida. My buddy Ian.
Pleasure to be here.
Thetyroexperience. This is the 5th recording. I don't know when this is going to come out, but it should be episode 5. But yeah, we're just out here playing some chess, having a nice beach day. Just got in the water. We were having a really good conversation, and I encouraged him to pause it so we could pick it up on the recording. But yeah, so this is Ian. Ian, why don't you just tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I guess a background here is Nolan and I met in college at Virginia Tech. We were both on the baseball team there. We were kind of friends, and then the night that we truly became friends was driving on a bus back from, I think we were in New Orleans.
Correct.
And after a series of unfortunate events in a long-term relationship led to my bus seat partner getting a little teary-eyed. And from that moment on, the friendship has sort of just blossomed. I think we were saying the other day, like, introducing each other as friend doesn't really capture the relationship that we even have. Like, it doesn't do the thing justice.
No.
So, and then I guess from there, I got drafted during the COVID year, and then now
baseball. He plays baseball. Yeah.
I'm playing minor league baseball, rehabbing from Tommy John surgery, down here in Florida, and Sunday's our off day, so we got to run out to the beach for a little bit.
And that's pretty much it. Good episode. Good deal. I'm kidding. No, that's exactly right. I remember that day very vividly. It was in New Orleans. After a game, I think it was after like your first win against Ball State. I think. And
first collegiate win.
And yeah, just some tough circumstances, perhaps not handled in the most stoic of ways by yours truly. But yeah, you were sitting next to me, and from then on, it was just kind of like one of those things. We started hanging out more, started like just having more deep conversations, and obviously, like, I mean, we'd have a whole long podcast about like just the stories and memories we've made together. But yeah, Ian, I mean, you're obviously very, very tapped into, from my perspective, a lot of people don't know you, but I always tell people that don't know you that I'm like talking about you too. I refer to you as like a baseball monk, because you have like a totally almost not counterproductive, but it's an unusual and unique perspective on what you do for a job or for a living, and like what happens to be a big part of your life. I think a lot of people, myself included, maybe yourself included at some other point in your career, you just think of baseball player, specifically like college pro ball player, you think like, okay, frat, kind of like basically just like a sport frat, get after it, on and off the field. But you take like a very unique perspective in terms of like you're talking about getting chess lessons and piano lessons and doing ballet and all this crazy stuff that to the normal person be like, how does that relate to baseball at all? And I kind of want to get your perspective on like why you think that is. Why do you take that perspective?
Yeah, well, from my perspective, that's not a thing that has always been the case, I would say. And we've even talked about this in the last year of our lives. Obviously, your career ending, your college baseball career, and I guess baseball career ending, and then me getting surgery and being removed from baseball for the first time since I was like 8 years old. It's something that completely changed us and set us on this path of different interests and different perspectives, and sort of set us on, I guess was the foundation of you wanting to start this podcast in a way. So, yeah. The interesting part for me is baseball was such a huge thing for me. It always was like, I got my fulfillment from being successful in baseball. Like, that was where the purpose and meaning of my life up until last year came from. And I guess the realization that I'm making more and more lately is I'm inherently fulfilled just by being a human being on this planet. And I bring that energy of fulfillment towards other things. And those interests and those hobbies just sort of come naturally. And bring so much more meaning to a life that is already inherently fulfilled. So that's definitely an evolved perspective. That's not something that I certainly would have had even a year ago.
Well, especially not in college.
No.
I mean, if I had said, hey, man, in 3 years you're going to be an avid chess player, you're going to be thinking about doing piano and guitar lessons and singing lessons and ballet and all this different stuff, I think you would have been like, shut up, dude.
Yeah, I would have been like, that's just a distraction. Like, all my life needs to be centered towards baseball. And I guess to answer your question in a roundabout way, I don't see myself as a baseball player. Like, that's just an avenue in which I give from an abundance of fulfillment. And, like, I bring enjoyment into that area for the other people that I encounter. And the other interests that come up are because this is my job and I have the free time to be able to explore those. And it's no longer a job that I look at as like I'm not a success, or I define my value based on my performance in that. It's just something that allows me to give from an abundance of myself to those around me and to the experiences that I have.
Yeah, and I think firstly, I think the change, I'm sure you've seen a change in me to some capacity, but like the change, because I think we were very similar in that way in college where, I mean, we would have like one night a week where we could go out. We lived together obviously, and we'd be like, okay, Saturday night or Friday night is when we're going to send it. And then the rest of the week, like in bed by 9 o'clock eating, I mean, you would literally eat spinach and chicken with no seasoning. I would eat ground beef and all that. Like, it just, we put ourselves in such a box that I feel like in the long term for me, it made me worse at baseball, but I think it also just made me worse at life because it was like so secluded. And what I think the comment I wanted to make on what you're doing now that I think is really cool is you're allowing yourself the freedom away from baseball so that when you get to baseball, like when you get to the field and when you have to really focus, you have that mental capacity to hit it even harder than you would otherwise because you have other endeavors that are not, it's not like you're going home and baseball. That's eating at your willpower, it's eating at your discipline, eating at your drive and your desire to even be good at it. So now that you have these other endeavors that are creative endeavors and thought-provoking endeavors and critical thinking endeavors, you have that freedom and that increased capacity when you get to the field, which I think, number one, it makes it not easier, but it makes it more enjoyable.
Yeah, well, right. You remember why you enjoyed doing the thing in the first place. Like when I was a kid, baseball, I liked playing because it was just fun and I enjoyed playing it. And then, I mean, as you grow higher and higher in the sport, it, I guess, almost unconsciously became a bigger and bigger thing in my eyes. And it's just getting that time because of an injury away from it is just a perfect reset of this is not what I made it out to be, and the time away from it, I can still want to be as successful and go as far as I can in the sport, but I'm not as attached to that outcome. And paradoxically, by letting go of that, it makes it so much easier to attain. The likelihood, Matthew McConaughey, when we were just talking about this, but the likelihood of you achieving something that you don't need to achieve is higher. It's like you ever heard what are those balls, like the Newton balls, or like it hits? I think we talked about this.
Yeah,
the
like,
paddle ball.
It's like if I hold on to a ball, right? Like one of those, like, I can't remember what they're called. You know what I'm referring to.
It's a paddle with a string connecting to a ball.
Well, no, I was referring to like the one where it's like 4 balls and you pull the one and it knocks into it.
Oh, yeah, like in science class?
Yeah. What happens when you pull onto the ball? You hold onto it and then you let it go. It goes further away from you. Yeah. And the force goes away from you. So that's like the analogy of holding on to something so tight, which for me, that's exactly what I did with my baseball career. Like until the last year, which I unironically, in the truest sense of that word, not even a tiny bit ironic in my opinion, was the best year by far and the most fun I've ever had playing baseball because I did not care. I chalked up my career to fate at that point and it ended up working out. The opposite of that is pushing something away when you're like, nah, I don't want this. what's going to happen?
It comes closer to you.
Going to come hit you in the face. So I think there's that paradox of not caring about your baseball career, because it's obviously something that you enjoy. It's also a means of making a living, and a good one at that. It's a very, very unique career. Not a lot of people can relate. So it's not so much that you want to not care to the point where you like give up the opportunity, but it's also you don't want to care so much that your life is miserable while you're waiting to hopefully achieve it one day.
Yeah, you're holding on to some concept so much that any slight shake to that ideal that you've built up just completely shatters. And that's basically pretty much what happened when I got hurt. Like that foundation that I built up over all these years just completely crumbled. And and the interesting part is like that happened to both of us at the same time. And so it's like almost a parallel line of thinking and a parallel growth, I would say, that we've gone through in this last year. Just sort of undoing those conditioned, unhealthy habits that we built up, and discovering like the men that we want to be, the experiences that we want to have, and the things that we value. And they're much different than they used to be. And I can guarantee if we had this conversation again in 5 years, they're probably way different then than they are now.
Hopefully we will. And that brings up the question for me. Are you grateful that happened?
Oh, I would say it's probably the biggest gift that I've ever been given in my entire life.
That you got injured.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Which is so cool.
It's funny too, whenever I probably have to be more careful about this, but whenever one of my friends ends up needing surgery, like one of our best friends and roommates, Zach, just got it. You're sad for them because you know that they want to be playing, but because my experience has been so meaningful and so life-changing, it's almost like I get excited for them that they have that opportunity to completely change their lives, really. And it's not one that ordinarily you're given in any job or in any
like a reset
point of life. Yeah, it's literally like a full redo. Like you get to address anything that you possibly could want.
And I think the other cool thing, sorry, this guy's out here shredding, that's kind of cool. The other thing that's interesting is the parallel to, I guess it's just a way of looking at so many different situations in life. You need space. You need to be able to detach, to be able to see things clearly. And Jocko Willink talks about this in what I think to be like the most articulate and easy to digest way. He speaks about detaching so that you can like look up and look out, so you're not like so locked in on what you're doing. For you as baseball, for somebody else it might be sewing sweaters. I don't know, literally whatever it is. If you're so locked in on it that you can't take a step back and be like, wait, why am I even doing this? What's the point? And then once you kind of re-lock in, maybe for you, what happened is you found like a new love for baseball and new avenues to even enjoy it even more.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because initially I held on to this career and my idealized vision of how it would go, and I couldn't enjoy vacations. I couldn't go out. I couldn't enjoy spending time with my friends. Everything was rigorous, almost to like the point of tyranny. Like I wouldn't allow myself to have any type of fun.
Yeah.
And then the natural sway of that energy is to go to the complete other side. And so for a while, almost until the past month or so, I would say, I pushed away anything that I wanted. I would say like, no, I don't, that desire is not something that I need. I'm fulfilled inherently. I don't need that in my life. I'm going to let go of that want. And I almost the exact opposite of how I used to be. And as it is with everything, finding that middle ground of it's okay to want things and it's okay to get the things that you want, but at the same time, those can't have full and total control and power over all of your decisions.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
That
healthy middle ground.
Yeah, I sent you a picture, I think recently, of a quote. I'm going to botch who it's by and what exactly it says, but it says, true freedom is not all your desires coming true. It's the ability to control your desires.
Yeah.
And not in a tyrannical way, to the point like you mentioned, where it's like I'm never doing anything that's pleasurable ever, because that's not like, that's kind of a tyrannical life, and that's, you treat yourself like a tyrant and a slave, which is no way to live. But it's also not being so hedonistic that you're succumbing to every desire and you're like losing track of who you are and where you're going because a desire pops in your head. You're like, oh, I got to do it.
Yeah, and you think nothing matters.
Yeah.
There are two ends of the spectrum that you hit, and then eventually you settle in the middle, and
hopefully you can stay there.
Well, yeah, and I guess the thought I've had recently is like, you'll have a step forward, and you'll be happy with the path that you're going, and then you'll fall back into an old habit and feel like, oh, I haven't made any progress at all. And the reality is, like, I don't know if there's even a measure of progress. It's just there's ups and there's downs, and those are the things that happen, and you kind of just ride with them. Yeah.
It's a thought that I had. I was going to bring this up earlier, but I was saving it. A thought that I had recently. If I could internalize this and remember it and realize it in every moment, I think it would be a really cool life. But there has literally not been a singular moment, I believe this, of my life, your life, anybody's life, that did not happen for like an intent purpose. It has literally led to the culmination of you being where you are, right where you are, exactly when you need to be there, so that you can move forward in the best way possible. Because for me, I'm almost certain that you're going to agree with this. It's sometimes that I'll just get sort of what you were saying previously about I couldn't even enjoy vacations. I couldn't enjoy it because I was like so locked in on what I wanted to do that it almost made what I wanted to do not even enjoyable either. Mm-hmm. So it was
a burden.
Yeah.
Like having that desire ended up being a burden instead of something that like you should have just been enjoying the whole time.
And then, but like you mentioned, the sway, the ups and downs is you're going to learn from it, we're going to learn from it, we're going to learn from it, and then something else will happen. Then you'll be like, okay, well, I need to learn from this, and I need to learn from this. And it's just like, how do you ride those waves in the most equanimous of ways?
Yeah, well, and I guess in my experience, too, it's like those habits never really truly go away. And every once in a while, like, you're going to fall back into them to remind yourself, oh, that's why I stopped doing that one thing. Like,
yeah.
It's like,
it sucks.
I remember why I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Or I remember why I changed my mind about that.
Yeah.
So
here's a question. I asked Mike this. I think I asked several people this on the podcast thus far. Brian Kane, shout out to him. This is $1 million question, man. What do you know now that you wish you knew, let's say, 5 years ago? Like when we first met, when you're a freshman in college, you're 18, got the whole world at your fingertips. What do you know right now that you wish you knew then?
It's so funny because I guess the correct answer is I don't want to tell that person anything to change the trajectory of what my life was. Like I like the mistakes that I made. I obviously don't want to make them again, but I needed them, and I needed to make them. And the same thing goes for the good things that happen. And it's also interesting looking back, because it's like you don't even recognize the person that you were. Like if I met my 18-year-old self face to face, it would be a weird experience because I don't even know how that person thinks.
Yeah,
I don't know how, like, I don't know what his interests are. I don't know. I really don't.
It'd be like a different person.
It
literally is a different person.
It's like meeting a different person. So every time I think along those lines, those are my first couple of thoughts that come up. But
I think that's a great response.
If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be to take an hour every day to be alone and feel the things that need to be felt. Like, take that hour. I think that's the most important thing anyone can do. You need an hour a day, no phone, completely. A helicopter just went by. I don't know if that'll catch on the podcast. You need an hour a day to digest the things that are going on in your life, to let emotions settle, to let emotions that need to come up. And if I don't, like, consistently taking that hour is what sort of set this whole entire process in motion. That's what set these changes in motion between the both of us, I would say.
Naval Ravikant, who I've spoken to you about, I'm sure, and then several people. He's a billionaire entrepreneur. I call him a billionaire monk, ironically. He said he might have been quoting somebody, but I heard him say this in a podcast. All of man's problems stem from his inability to sit alone with his thoughts for 30 minutes.
And I still even will feel the resistance towards dealing with an emotion. A thought will come up or an emotion will come up, and I'll find myself reaching for my phone or running away from it or trying anything not to feel that feeling. And then the reality of it is, like, it's not going to hurt you. It's okay to feel it.
Jordan Peterson, exactly on that note, he says, what you run away from grows.
Yeah,
So
it really does.
You have to face the darkness. And it doesn't even have to be darkness. You could even, it's a lot harder. It might even be harder to be aware when you're really happy. Frankly, because it's like a out-of-body experience, but it's very, very, very easy to be so over-aware when you're sad or when you're down,
Yes.
when you're in the negatives of life. But when you, instead of, like you mentioned, running away from it via phone, porn, video games, alcohol, vaping, Instagram, any number of
well, for me, my outlet to that was just work, like burying my head deeper and deeper into working for baseball.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Which
like becoming more and more tyrannical in those
just as
habits.
unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's everybody's got. I think there's different levels to it. Like, I think that's probably all in all a more healthy way to do it than like going for a hard drug, obviously.
Yeah.
But either way, it's still not getting to the core of the problem.
No, it's
And
avoiding it.
You're pushing back your growth. Not you specifically, everybody that does this, which pretty much everybody does. I think that's one of the whole points of meditation. I think a lot of people talk about meditation in sort of like a mystical. It's like you have to be like
some power. Yeah, like you have to
it's
tap
literally
into some
just
divine
sitting
thing.
still. Like,
Yeah, it's the
so
art of
hard.
doing nothing.
It's
It's
so
quite
damn
literally
hard.
the art of doing nothing.
But it's so hard, which I find hilarious because there's so many tough men in the world. I really believe this. Like the toughest men in the world. It would be one of the toughest things they've ever done to sit for like an hour.
Yeah,
And not
with
do
nothing.
anything.
Yeah,
Because it's very difficult, especially if you're not happy with who you're sitting with.
I think it might have been the How to Break Up with Your Cell Phone book, but there was a study that people did where they would get an electric shock and they asked them, is that painful? And of the people who said, yes, that was very painful, they took those people and put them in a room with the only thing they could do was electronically shock themselves. Something that they just said was painful.
Yeah.
And instead of just sitting in that room for 20 minutes, I think 98% of the people in the study shocked themselves, and one dude in the 15 minutes shocked himself like 600 times.
I think that was that book.
Because
And
he just couldn't handle it.
because they would rather do that than it's Lady Annabelle's. I would rather hurt than feel nothing at all or whatever.
They physically can't, like, and that's, I mean,
It's
I'm
some
saying that
stimulus.
like I'm not the same.
Yeah.
I would if I was put in a room, I'd probably shock myself a bunch of times.
Well, I think the correlation she was trying to make in that book was about the phone. It's like we know for a fact that our like the relationship that most of us have with our phones is not good. Yet we shock ourselves in the form of, let's pick it up, whatever. Let's pick it
Yeah.
up, whatever. It's
I
bad
mean, it's
and-
okay. I'll
yeah.
just take a look.
Exactly, and then 15 minutes goes by. You're like, I shouldn't have done that. And then an hour later, you do the exact same thing. So that's what the point she was trying to make. But that is an incredible insight into human psychology. That this
It's pretty crazy.
But even the 600, that's like a little bit psychopathic. But
Yeah, that guy, someone probably needs to check on him.
But even the other people, like run-of-the-mill people, shocking themselves, something they just said was painful. They were so unwilling or unable in that moment to sit with their thoughts for 15, 20 minutes.
It wasn't a long time.
That they decided to inflict pain on themselves as opposed to doing that.
Yeah.
And it makes me harken back to that Naval quote. How many problems could I solve by just actually sitting and being with those problems in my life, and as opposed to running from them and creating more problems?
Yeah.
It's very
just
interesting.
delaying, like taking a minute to delay your response to anything. Like reactiveness, I don't know if has ever really done me good.
Yeah.
Like impulsively reacting to a situation as opposed to like just taking a little bit and thinking about what's going on is always the better avenue.
I think it has to do with the speed in which we live life nowadays and the speed at which we think we have to live life.
Yeah.
There's this idea called slow maxing. Has anybody ever talked to you about that?
Nah.
It's like I found it on some of these Twitter profiles I follow talk about it. maxing being like MAXXING. Like you could sun max, you can like testosterone max. It's basically just like optimizing something.
Yeah.
And the idea behind slow maxing is doing something intentionally as slow, like not like slow motion, but purposefully saying, you know what, I'm gonna cook dinner tonight and I'm gonna cook it slowly. Like I'm gonna clean my pans, I'm not gonna have my phone, I'm gonna actually hear the sounds of the noise of it cooking, and then I'm gonna eat it slowly. And that seems a little bit far-fetched to a lot of people, but when you think about how quickly we live our lives, I think it's pretty needed.
Yeah, well, that's I guess I have two thoughts on that subject. One of my favorite stories is there was a monk who, if he didn't perform an action with full, slow mindfulness, he would redo it. And after 10 years of doing that, he became enlightened, is how the story goes. I don't know if whatever that's enlightened cool, means, but I just think that that's a cool way to say that you'll probably figure a lot of things out if you bring full mindfulness to every activity that you do. And the second thing is there's an ideology that says there's three things or three characteristics towards finding joy in what you're doing. And one of those things is aimlessness, just doing something just for the sake of doing it. Like not to get to something else, like not to achieve an end goal, just doing something for the sake of doing it. And that's sort of what reminds me of the slow maxing. It's like there's no goal, there's no end in sight. It's just I'm gonna go for a walk and I'm gonna end up where I end up. And I don't think there's ever been anyone who goes on a walk to nowhere that's been like, man, that was horrible.
Yeah,
I hated that.
Yeah, that's it. Well, even on a less abstract and more practical, I don't think anybody's ever been on a walk in the sun and been like, damn it, I wish I didn't do that.
Yeah, what was I thinking?
Wait, I wasn't on my phone, I was in the fresh air, I was outside, shouldn't have done that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can take that a step further. There was a guy I used to listen to on a podcast, and he would get lost on purpose.
Yeah.
Legitimately, he was an older dude. He would walk to work, like 45-minute walk there and back, and he would just take new routes all the time without his phone and just get lost. And he's like, well, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Which is probably a lot more enjoyable way to get home than a 15-minute car ride sitting in traffic.
Well, and that applies to everything. It's hard to do a lot of times, but when you're making dinner, it's not making dinner because I need to eat, otherwise I'm not going to be healthy, and I need to make this dinner and eat it as fast as I can so I can go to bed on time and get up in the next morning and have a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what, I'm just going to make dinner however long it takes, and that's what's going to happen. And it's just, it makes the things that you do way more enjoyable.
How do you think that came about, the structure, like just the tyrannical, we keep using that word, but like the tyrannical structure in terms of time that we've like come to live with? Because I find it hard to believe that the Sioux Indians were super pressed about how long their bison took to cook so that they get to sleep at a timely manner and then wake up so they could go work out and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
How do you think that came to be?
It's definitely a perpetuating societal, I guess you could say, flaw. It's almost like a positive feedback loop because people grow up in that environment. They become like that because of the environment that they grew up in. They have kids and their kids become like that, and it sort of just continues the evolution of that thought process. And it's just, like you were saying, you were in Costa Rica. It's a completely different culture. It feels slower. Like you go there and your time stops almost.
Yeah.
People aren't worried about, I gotta get home and make my dinner because I got these things to do tomorrow and I have this quota to meet. Or
we spoke about that at dinner one time. It took the dinner actually most meals took longer than they would here. Yeah. And we were kind of laughing about it, like, dude, these people don't give a fuck about American time. And we were like, wait a second, maybe this is like a sign for us. Like, dude, what are we we kind of stepped back. We're like, wait, what are we in a rush for? Like, the only place we have to go is to our house that's on a freaking with a pool. Like, what are we in a rush to do?
Yeah. What's so funny about that is when I went there, I left my phone at home completely.
Yeah, which is like probably one of the coolest things any of my friends have ever done.
And the biggest insight that I had
left his phone. I want to clear. You left your phone in Boston.
Yeah, when I went
for
to
the
Costa Rica.
entirety of your
Yeah.
Costa Rican trip, which I think is freaking awesome.
But the most interesting thing, like the biggest insight that I had was I was constantly wondering what time it was. Constantly. I had nowhere to be. We had nothing to do. And I was like, I wonder what time it is.
And
Which
you're
is
like,
just strange because it's like
does it
everything,
matter?
our society is completely driven by time.
And you think about in that context, because I can see the merit in in somebody's job, like in a day-to-day, you have places you need to be out of respect for your agreements, your commitments, and the other people's times. That's understandable. But in a circumstance like you or I were like in Costa Rica, where do we have to be? Like,
and it's like,
oh, we need to get to the beach on time. We need to
comes
get
up.
to the beach on time so we can hang out for longer. Okay, well, what if we just got to the beach when we got to the beach?
Yeah.
What if we ate dinner when we ate dinner, and then that's a very interesting insight, and I honestly think that's one of the coolest things any of my friends have ever done. What was it, like a 10-day vacation or something?
Yeah.
With no phone?
And I came back and I really didn't have that many messages anyway.
Dude, I actually I thought about that recently because I remember you
telling
me
me
that.
man, I wonder how many people texted me, and I was like,
It's like me.
like my 4 friends.
You're probably thinking, wow, I probably missed so much.
Yeah.
And then you realize that the world kept on going.
Yeah.
Which is another powerful insight. Like, dude,
it really is. Like,
half the reason I check my phone.
Why am I so drawn to this thing when if I put it down, nothing actually happens? I miss nothing.
I genuinely think half the reason I check my phone on a daily basis or like out of any habitual need is, oh, I bet you I missed. Oh wait, never mind.
It's to see if something happens.
Is that an ego thing? Like, am I like more
probably
way less important than I
I
think I am? Because I'm like, wait, somebody probably. Oh wait, never mind. Nobody texted me, but now I guess I'll just go on Instagram. I'm already on my phone.
Yeah. While I'm here, I might as well. See what's happening there,
and then see if you can create. That's a good insight, man. That's awesome. That Costa Rican trip was.
We'll be back.
Yeah, that'll be.
I'd say the 2 of us together and along with some other friends.
Derek Drees, if you're listening to this, you're coming. You have no choice.
We're gonna kidnap you.
Yeah, no, but so a little bit on the baseball side, you're coming back from TJ. People that don't know what TJ is, it's probably the most common.
It's like
baseball.
Wisdom tooth surgery for pitching.
Yeah, it's your UCL right here. It's very important for throwing. You pretty much need it.
Can't throw that.
What happens is you tear it. It's typically like a 12 to 16 month recovery. And you got your first live ABs next Tuesday.
In 2 days, yeah.
Which is very exciting, I'm
So
sure.
it's like exactly a year and a week from when I had surgery.
Which is very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. That people that don't know baseball, that's like waiting a year for anything, but that's a long, hard year of doubt and delayed gratification because you got to if you took off 2 weeks in the middle of last August's rehab, you wouldn't be where you are now, and your rehab would be thrown off now. So it's kind of like,
in a way, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have to put your head down and really work during the rehab process, even though you can't even throw for a good bit of it.
Yeah.
But
and it's like when it first happened, you stare down that year, and it's a long ways away. And then by the time it finally gets here, you're like, you don't even recognize. Like you really do come out of an injury a completely different person.
Yeah.
I would say that's a pretty common experience for most athletes.
Yeah, and we were talking about this a while ago, but you brought up the point. I think I was reading Musashi about the famous swordsman from Japan, and the whole idea of martial arts, and you compared baseball to a martial art, not in the sense of like the life and death aspect, but it's essentially a creative expression of your life. Pitching specifically, hitting, something about pitching, maybe it's because I was a pitcher, it's just like artistic, dude, like pitch design, the whole delivery of it's like a dance almost. And hitting, you could say, is the same, I guess. How do you see that correlation? Like, how do you see the similarities between like a martial art and pitching?
I think it might have been only a week or so after I got my surgery, we talked, and I said that my end goal in all of this was to sort of like become enlightened in the art of pitching.
Yeah.
I think was what I set out to do, and I can't claim to be that.
Who's going to give you that award?
Yeah.
Who's going to be like, here he is?
I think it's funny that was like where my head first went, but it really is like there's a certain sense of gratification in knowing everything that there is to know about a certain skill, and like being able to completely lose yourself in that. And I'd say that's most evident when you watch someone who can really sing perform, or when you watch someone who really is talented at like playing piano or orchestra. They completely lose themselves in what it is they're doing, and it's just a really great avenue for people to like channel that creative energy that they have. And if you think about it in that way, it's just so much more of an enjoyable thing, as opposed to like, oh, I need to have a good game today so I can get called up, and then you're starting to think in a way that's just going to drive you nuts.
It's for somebody who is not privy to baseball and the pitching in general, it might not make sense, but you really can see how it would become an artistic expression, more or less, a disciplined pursuit of creation. Because what a pitcher is doing in terms of pitch design, you're literally design. Okay, I have this arm angle, I have a baseball, and I have a plate, or I have this body, this baseball on the plate, and then a hitter. I want this ball to do this, and then you have the constraints of physiology and physics. So you have those constraints. Okay, how creative can I get within those constraints in making a baseball do a crazy thing or a really cool thing or a unique thing? And then you throw in the competition, meaning like to the martial arts example, swordsman had swordsmen that they dueled. You have a hitter that's essentially trying to impose his artful will on you, like his artful expression on yours. So it's just a cool dance and a cool battle, and something that I didn't really think about ever until you said that.
Well, yeah, and I guess as my career has moved further and further at each new level, it becomes that art aspect of it, I would say, becomes more and more important. Like it's less about I'm just better than these people, like I don't even really need to try, I'm just beating them. Versus like, okay, I just threw this pitch and the hitter reacted in this way. This means that he's only looking at a pitch on the inside corner. Like he's only looking inside. He's looking at nothing away. So I can throw a fastball away and he'll just take it because he's not looking in that area of the plate. So it's things like that, and that's I would say the next like evolution in where my skill development goes.
I had a jiu-jitsu coach, I'm trying to remember who said it to me. Oh, I think it was my jiu-jitsu coach when he got to black belt. His black belt coach that gave him his black belt said, "Welcome to jiu-jitsu." And you think, okay, dude, you've been doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years. What do you mean, welcome to jiu-jitsu? In that way, the deeper you dive into a subject, the more experience, the more expertise you gain, the more you're open up to the fact that you actually know nothing, and that there's like infinite possibilities that you have. It's the same with chess, same with jiu-jitsu, probably the same with everything in life. It's the more you know, the more that you understand that you actually know nothing. Yeah,
and it's that natural evolution. Like you have that period where you think you know everything that there is to know about it, and then
the world comes crashing
all of a sudden you're like, wait a second. And it's like it's impossible to know what you can't know. You have to go through the experience to understand. This is the next step that I need to take, or I didn't even realize that was an aspect that I needed to work on, and that's something that I need to pursue.
That's an interesting insight. Perhaps part of the learning curve and becoming more of an expert in a subject is the more you gain knowledge of, the more you realize that there's so many things that you don't know, so then you want to know those things too. Because if on the surface I don't even, like if I played piano, I don't even know what I don't know. Like all I know is there's keys and you push them. I don't know how any of that works. I don't know the notes or anything. But then you start learning, and you're like, oh wait, so I don't know anything about this. Then you want to go learn about that, and et cetera. So that's just really cool. I think that's something that people can, myself included, can take that ideology about a martial art or an artistic expression in the form of baseball, in the form of jiu-jitsu, in the form of an actual art like singing, painting, or whatever, and then into your daily life of whatever it is that you're trying to push for.
Or even in like your own personal journey. The sort of the path that I'd say we've been on. It's each day you discover something that you didn't know, and that there's more to learn about I guess
Yeah.
life in general. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to even come up with the words for that, because it's like, what is the goal?
I'm trying to think of an analogy, but it's just like it's a cave. Like you enter the cave and you realize that on the inside of the cave is actually the whole world. It's because it's a little narrow opening, and you crawl through, and you're struggling. You crawl through, and you're like, holy crap, this thing's way bigger than I thought it was. And then it can be overwhelming in a sense. I just brought up cave, so this reminded me of a philosophical thing that you taught me about, the allegory of the cave. Do you want to talk about that?
That was earlier in my my surgery process. I was in an audiobook phase, and I listened to the entire Plato's Republic, and the allegory of the cave comes up in that. And it's basically, for those not familiar with it,
Which most people probably won't be.
it's the analogy goes that there's prisoners lined up in a cave, and there's a fire behind them casting shadows onto a wall. And so the prisoners facing the wall, know the world only as shadows. And when they are freed, they realize that the shadows that they were seeing were actually people and a whole civilization behind them and a whole new world that they've never seen before, and that they could never have even comprehended. And then when they go back into the cave and are chained up again, they see those shadows and they know that they're not actually what they seem. And so there's a million different directions that you could take that. And I would encourage anyone to actually listen to Plato's words instead of my probably botched description of what he was trying to convey. But the concept is that everything that you see, the reality that you experience, is not reality as it really truly is. And I don't know if there is a path to free yourself to see that, but I think that the goal is to try to discover those ways of freedom to see reality the way that it is.
You can just Google it, look up allegory of the cave. That's what I did, and it's just an interesting. There's pictures obviously, and they're very interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's kind of scary how you realize you could be one of those prisoners in your own life, where right now you're kind of shackled and you're looking at the reflections of what, like, of the reflections that aren't actually what the real thing. And then once you escape, you're like, wait a second, that was just another dude putting hand signs up on the wall. So yeah, that's very interesting. I just wanted to bring that up because we were talking about caves. But in terms of back to baseball, I think a lot of people they glamorize, like they hear pro athlete, they hear getting drafted, and they're like, holy crap, dude, that must be like, your life's probably sweet. But I want you to drop some insight on what minor league baseball is like, and kind of the unseen grind of it all, because I really don't think people understand the struggle and the grind that is minor league baseball. So if you could shed some light, like what's like your day-to-day when you're in low A, like what do you...
Well, it is, I have to say that minor league baseball, through the work of a ton of different people who had been through minor league baseball when it was really bad, got together and unionized, and so now we're part of the MLBPA.
Yeah.
So we're part of a union now. There's compensation for guys, so they can live sustainably on their salaries. They don't have to get a job in the off season. They provide housing now for players. They provide 2 meals a day, and so the way that I experienced minor league baseball versus someone who was in it 10 to I can't even imagine what it was like 30 years ago, is a much, much different experience.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate to be a part of it when it's a much more player-friendly environment now than it previously had been. But in terms of the glamour aspect of it, it's easy as an outsider to look on it and say, oh, you play a professional sport, like there must be no struggle, there must be no everything just must come easily. And that's definitely, it's no different than any other job. Like there's there's great things about it, and there's things that I don't like about it. There's things that I never expected that I would like about it, and there's things that I never expected that I really dislike about it. So a normal day when you're at affiliate is you get to the field around 2, stretch, throw on the field as a pitcher, take ground balls, take BP as a hitter. You go in, you lift if you're lifting that day, you get treatment if you need it. You go out, play a game, finish up around 11-ish, eat your dinner, play some cards with the boys when you get back, and wake up the next day and start it all over again from April until October.
Like
pretty much every
days.
single day, yeah.
It's
so the duration and the length of the season, I'd say, is a huge struggle. And also, in terms of minor league baseball, college is so different because everyone's working towards the same goal. There's a team aspect, and there's a communal struggle of striving to achieve something together. And the biggest shift and the biggest thing that I wasn't really expecting coming into minor league baseball was it's completely individual now.
Yeah.
The group goal is when you make it, when you're in the big leagues. But as a minor league player, your goal is to get to the big leagues, and it's about you and you alone. And so that's pretty isolating a lot of times. It can lead to certain guys will root against you. Certain guys will want you to fail because they see you as an obstacle to their success. And I can even say that probably I was one of those guys at a certain point.
Which is some serious self-awareness.
Yeah. And I guess you just realize that if you're worrying about that, you're never going to make it anyway.
Yeah, that's a seriously lack mindset. That's a big lack mindset.
Yeah. And so I'd say the biggest thing that I didn't expect coming into professional baseball was how lonely it would be. You don't have your teammates working towards the same thing. You don't have the guys that want you to succeed because they want the team to succeed. It's just really guys that are trying to get and fulfill their own childhood dreams. And that's not to say that there aren't relationships that you make that are meaningful and that are great friendships. It's just that there's a lot of lonelier days. It's a much lonelier thing than people might realize. And I don't know if that's something I dislike, but it's definitely something that I didn't expect coming into it.
I think I've obviously never played pro ball. I always joke about this. I'm like the worst of all my friends because literally every one of my friends is playing pro ball from college, but not me. So I always joke about that. But obviously I've never played pro ball. But I do think you're exactly right in the sense that you go to college, obviously people leave, people transfer for different reasons, but you're with a core group of guys in your class for 3-4 years. Mm-hmm. You go through 6 a.m. workouts, long practices, team building experiences, the World Series challenges or whatever, Hockey Challenge, the program, if you're really unlucky.
Dude.
No, but you just go through all these. It's just all shared, all this
shared adversity.
It's shared adversity, and that's how you. That's really how connections are strengthened, is through shared adversity. So you do all this, and then you go to pro ball and you train in the off season separately. You have different training regimens in season. You have different throwing programs. You have different, you have all these different things. So it's kind of hard to get that congruency. And like you mentioned, obviously in the big leagues, when you're competing for a World Series, a World Championship, that's obviously much different.
Yeah.
Because there is a sense of communal aspiration.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting insight, and I do think that's probably what wears and tears on a lot of, at least my friends so far that I've talked to, is that length. You're doing that for 160 days, man. That's tough.
And it's not like you're with the same people throughout that whole thing. Guys get sent up, guys get sent down, guys get released. There's constant movement. I think at one point in 2021, I was on 3 different teams in a span of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's
hard to make friends that way.
It's not necessarily that, but it's hard to have those true lasting relationships, like the ones that you make in college, because you're just not, you're just a small chapter in each of these people's lives. It's not like you're with them throughout this
for literally 4 straight years.
Yeah, living on top of them for
that's a
year
unique
long.
And that's also, I would say that's a pretty unique thing for most jobs as well, because most corporate or non-corporate jobs, you're going to be a part of at least like a team that's similar to the college experience, meaning you're going to probably get onboarded at similar times. When you get onboarded, you're going to go through similar things, and you're going to start working hand in hand and like step in step. Whereas, dude, some people get called up to the big leagues in half a year or less than that. Some people get called up in
5.
Dude,
Yeah.
there's one dude for. What up, buddy? Wasn't there a dude for the Royals a couple years ago who pitched for like 11 years in the minor leagues?
The one dude with the Pirates just debuted at like 34.
Which is so you just think about that dude's been in that for 14 years.
Yeah.
And then you get other younger dudes that are in there for 5-6 months. And then you get dudes that are in the middle. So it's just this huge fluctuation of personalities, ages, maturity, life experience. So that's definitely a unique experience and a unique insight. I think that's interesting. I've never really even thought about that, the loneliness part.
Yeah. Well, it really is. And it's not something I could have ever anticipated either until you become a part of it. The individuality definitely does make it a little bit more lonely.
Such as like, hey, you talked about it, an hour a day.
Yeah.
It gives you a little bit.
It does give me that hour.
No, but okay. So to wrap it up, because you were one of the impetus, or not one of the impetus, but one of the catalysts for me getting into meditation in the first place. I remember William Jackson and all that type of stuff. What would you say is a good place for, and that's obviously been it's had a large impact on your life, meditation and mindfulness. How would you encourage?
That is like an understatement, probably.
Yeah, for sure. How would you encourage somebody to get into it if they haven't ever before? If they've never sat down, if they've literally never sat down and meditated, they've heard about it, they've kind of, that's a little bit eyewash, that's a little bit like spiritual, like whatever. How would you encourage somebody to get into it? Into whatever meditation is in your eyes. My
favorite app platform is probably the Waking Up app by Sam Harris. He just has an introductory course, like a 30-day introductory course, and it comes with a free trial. So you can do the full introductory course as part of the free trial. And then if you end up wanting to pay for the app, then you can pay for it. But I don't think it has to, like, people think it has to be this formal, like, you sit cross-legged and you focus on your breath incessantly.
Yeah.
It's not that at all. It can be anything that you want it to be. You can practice yoga for an hour a day. You can pray if you're religiously inclined. You can go on a walk with no music, no outside external thing. You can play your instrument, like at any point. Like, I guess meditation for me is if you're just doing something mindfully, that's meditation. And if you're holding that, and that's really all you need to do to see the benefits of it. And
it's like a
sort of set
reduction
you
in
back.
stimuli almost.
Yeah.
It's almost like how Marcus Aurelius said this: if you want tranquility, do less.
Yeah.
So it's like almost how little
completely
can you
do something.
How little can you do other than the thing that you're doing?
Yeah.
Because I mean, for me, like I'll throw my ground beef in a pan, and then I'll go like do something on my computer, and then I'll go try to brush my teeth, or like obviously not in that order, but like I'll just do these random things.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, well, what if I just like actually threw the ground beef in the pan and took care of that, and then I took care of the other thing? So that's interesting. Yeah. So it doesn't need to be like sitting crisscross applesauce, Indian style with
like rigid, hard as a rock. It's supposed to be something that you enjoy. Like so. Find your outlet for that hour alone in an area that you truly enjoy.
Yeah. How does journaling come into that for you? Do you journal afterwards or anything like that?
That's definitely been an evolution too. Because there were times where I thought that I had to write down something every time I meditated. Like I had to learn something. And then eventually it's the way that I see things now is if there's something an insight that strikes me as super important or something that I want to remember, I'll write that down. Or sometimes I'll just go into my journal and not think at all about what I'm writing, and I'll just let whatever thought come out. And a lot of times it's much more insightful than I could. It's like it comes from a source that isn't myself, almost. So it's like it's a message that I needed to hear, but it's not something that I consciously tried to bring about.
That's awesome. I do think journaling, like speaking and journaling, I think the way that you speak is the way that you live your life, really, because that's how you formulate thoughts, and how you formulate thoughts is how you interact with the environment around you. I think meditation is a way to delineate those thoughts and create clarity in your mind. They talk, I mean, like still mind basically is a phrase. But yeah, I think I love the hour a day advice, man. That's because people run from that. I've ran from that.
Well, and people will say that they don't have an hour to give, and it's like it doesn't have to be consecutive.
Yeah.
You can take 10 minutes 6 separate times throughout the day. I think people can manage that.
Yeah.
Or you can do the full hour right first thing when you wake up. That's what I've been doing lately.
I think Tony Robbins said this, or maybe somebody else. This is exactly on that line. Because he like tells people 10 minutes. And he's like, people tell me all the time, I don't have 10 minutes. He's like, well, if you don't have 10 minutes, you need an hour. And if you don't have an hour, you don't have a life. So take that how you may.
It is. It's such an easy thing for people not to prioritize, and it's probably the lowest hanging fruit of how much better people could make their lives. And
I agree.
I will say though, I guess just a caution, initially it's gonna suck. Like that first 2 months, I used to meditate. I guess I started in college, but I did it strictly for improving my focus so that I could be better at baseball. Like I just kind of abused the practice. But when I really started just sitting down for the sake of sitting down, I felt so much more negative emotion that I'd ever even known was a part of my life. Like there was one point last year I was watching the sunset and I was like, I got sick to my stomach because of so much emotion that I had pushed down and away for so long.
Negative emotion.
Negative, yeah. Not positive.
Obviously, yeah.
And so just having the courage and having the people around you to be vulnerable with and talk to about those first couple of months when things are the hardest, because I think anyone will have a lot that they have pushed away in their life and a lot that they have been avoiding feeling, and feeling that all it can be overwhelming for sure.
It's like a detox in a way.
It literally,
think about it, because like when you take a detox for your liver or something, you might feel worse.
It's almost like a withdrawal symptom.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It really is for how you used to be.
But here you are a year after that sick to your stomach experience, and I'll ask you again, are you grateful that you experienced that?
Yeah, it was absolutely. I mean, it's hard. I don't even know if that does it justice.
I know what you mean.
That was exactly what I needed at exactly the right time.
Which is often the case.
Yeah.
In hindsight too, it's just
always is.
I think that hour is that hour a day, that practice is how you don't have to wait for a year to realize that was exactly what you need. You could realize that you are exactly where you are, exactly where you need to be right now after that hour.
That's ultimately the skill that you end up practicing, I would say. So it's no longer coming to terms and accepting things that you've done wrong in the past. It's no longer trying to find a way forward. It's just practicing the skill of being grateful for exactly where you are right now, and being grateful for knowing that you are inherently, like, I'm trying to think of the perfect way to say this, knowing that you are inherently fulfilled and there's nothing that you need to do or become to change the fact that where you are right now is exactly where you need to be.
It's a beautiful way to end it. Ian, I thank you very much, man. This has been awesome. This will absolutely not be the last time that you're on. I can say that with certainty. But I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having me on. It was I was definitely kind of nervous, which is funny because we've had these talks so many times, but you put the microphone in my hand and it felt a little inorganic.
That's exactly
so
how
it happened. Yeah, bro, it kind of eased up as like it went along.
The first couple, like when I interviewed Mike, I mean, my friend, first episode, I wasn't very nervous, but the first time I was really nervous was when I interviewed my jiu-jitsu coach, Coach Phil, for episode 3. I was like, holy crap, dude, this is like his time. Like I'm going to his office. Like it felt like I had never had a conversation. Then you start talking, it's like whatever.
Yeah, it naturally just sort of fades away. But initially I was like,
Is this your first podcast?
This is the first time I've ever. Oh no, I was on Billy Mitchell's Sons of Saturday podcast.
Oh, shout out Billy. That's awesome. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for
Y'all
having
have
me
a good
on.
one.